Hi guys, in today's video I'm going to show you how to install Laravel with Docker. But before we get started, make sure that you have already installed the Docker application inside of your system. So in my case, I have already installed it. Now let's get started. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to install MySQL, your hosting, which is the VPS, and your app, which is the Laravel, and the server name, which allows you to change your URL domain with different one instead of localhost colon 8000 port, and as well as the phpMyAdmin, so that we can manipulate the database easier with user interface. And the last thing is the SSL for development. Now let's get started. So I'm going to use warp, which is very easy to run any command line you want. So let's go ahead, check first where we are located. So I'm going to navigate inside of the downloads, and then let's go ahead, create the Laravel. Copy and replace the bracket with your desired project name. In my case, I want to use Laravel. Wait till it finish. It is now done. Let's go ahead, clear it. Let's go ahead, go inside of that project. Sorry. Now we have all the project now. Let's go ahead, open the Visual Studio Code and open the Laravel project. As you can see, I have my project here now. So the next thing we're going to do is, so in this documentation it tells you if you want to use API, then go ahead, run this following command. But right now I don't want to use, I don't want to build my Laravel project with API. So let's disregard that. Now let's proceed with the set up the environment file. Okay, go ahead, open your environment file and choose which DB connection you want. So in my case, I want to use MySQL, and since I don't find any MySQL configuration here, now let's just replace this here with MySQL and uncomment this following list. Let's just say I want to name my database with Laravel DB, or maybe let's just say Laravel. And I want to remind you guys that if you want to follow my documentation, I recommend you to put a unique username and password. So in my case, I want to use admin, and for the password, I want to use password. This, oh, thank God I have noticed that it's not actually required to put it's just MySQL. Now let's go ahead and close it, and then let's proceed with the next step, create the Docker file. Let's go ahead, create a Docker file, enter, and then copy this code and paste it. So as you can see, you can actually use a different version of PHP, but right now I want to use 8.t in my case. So let's go ahead, save it and close it, and then let's proceed with the step 4. Now let's go ahead. Now it is required to create a file, a directory, which is called engines. So let's go ahead, run this command. Now it's being created. Now let's go ahead, check it. As you can see, it is being created. Then the next thing is we're going to create a configuration file for the VPS, which is our hosting, which is for our hosting configuration. So I'm going to name this Laravel conf. Now let's go ahead and copy the following command here. I mean the code. So it is listening to uh, 80 port by default, so you don't have to change anything here, but I will just create a new line here so that it is much more readable. So let's go ahead, close it, and then of course we also need to create a file docker compose in order to build this project. Create a new file called docker compose YML. Now after that, let's go ahead, copy this code and paste it here. So we have a three services include here. So whenever the docker is built for this project, it will run the app and the DB, which is our MySQL, but of course we can as well change the version you want, and the Nginx, which is our hosting. So what we're going to do here is replace all the brackets here. So my current user, I want to name it developer image name, which is the image name for your Laravel project, and I want to name this app, and the app container name I want to call this app Laravel, and then let's go ahead, change all the network name. All the network names should be the same, so let's call it Laravel, right? So what else? Oh, of course the DB as well. Let's go ahead, change it. I want to call this MySQL Laravel, and for the last one, which is our hosting, Nginx, is Laravel. Let's go ahead, save it and close. Let me check again if we have forget anything else. It seems everything is fine now. So the next thing is we're going to build that project. Let's go ahead, build that. Now let's wait till it finish, and let's run our container. Now let's first check our Docker if it is actually built. As you can see, we have our project Laravel, and inside of the containers we cannot see it because it is not being run for the first time. Let's go ahead, run it. So it is now creating an Nginx, our hosting, and as well as the MySQL, and of course our Laravel project. So let's wait till it finish. It will take a few seconds. So as you can see, we have our Laravel project, which is this one, and our Nginx, which is stored inside of our Docker. It contains our hosting files there, and as well as the MySQL. So let's go ahead, check our Docker. Now as you can see, we have the Laravel server inside of the containers, and you can see as well that it is running three different image. So this one is for our project, our hosting. Oh, this one is our project. This one is for the MySQL, my bad. Now you can as well see the three different image that is being run, which is our app, Nginx, and MySQL. Now since it is being started, let's go ahead, check it. Let's open it. There you go. We can now access it. However, the database were not migrated. the default tables inside of the Laravel. So in order to do this, what we're going to do is copy the command, this one. So let me uh, take this note, guys, that since our Laravel is being run inside of the Docker, you cannot perform the artisan without 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 appending this Docker command. So this is required to run your PHP artisan. Okay, so let's go ahead, copy this one and run. Oh, I'm sorry. I should not do that there. Inside here, we should perform the command line inside here. Let's go ahead, run it. Now we have a small problem here. Okay, so yeah, I forgot. So by the way, guys, since our three different image were run successfully, the problem is our app Laravel cannot connect into our MySQL. That's the problem. So what we're going to do is, let's go back to our project and change our environment db host, because that by default our db host is using the local host by default, right? So what we're going to do is change the db host with the MySQL IP. So let's go find it, the db, and let's call the container name MySQL Laravel, this one. Copy that one and then paste it here. Okay, so even if we have changed, oh, I think this will do. Docker compose docker, docker compose, restarting. Let's go ahead, check it again. Now as you can see, it is now being connect. Now as you can see, the tables were not migrated, but the Laravel has allowed us to run it directly with this button. So just click this button and then it will run itself. Let's go ahead, refresh it. There you go. We can now finally access our Laravel with Docker. Okay. Now, what's the next thing we're going to do? The next thing we're going to do is instead of running our Laravel project with this URL, we want to run it with Laravel.test with this domain for development, right? So in order to do that, let's go back to our documentation and set up different server name. Okay, so again, let's go ahead, open the Docker Composer YML, and what we're going to do is copy the environment, put it inside of our app config below the restart, and put your desired domain you want. So I'm going to call mine Laravel.test. So that's all you need to do. And of course, we can as well change our default ports for our hosting. We don't want to use 8000, we want to use 80, because we don't want to put the 8000 here just to access our Laravel. Instead, we can just directly access our Laravel by entering this link without having the port, because the 80 is the default port. So okay, I think that's all you need to do. Now let's go ahead and close this one, and open your Laravel conf and set up your server name here. So as you can see, all you need to do is just put the server name in this line. Anyway, I will just copy it, replace everything and just copy it. As you can see, it is much more readable. And now let's now replace the bracket again. In my case, I am using Laravel.test, and I think that's all you need to do. And of course, please don't forget to add the Laravel.test globally inside of our host. So what we're going to do is sudo nano host. Enter the password. You pass this password is for your OS. So what I'm going to do is just create new one here, 127.0.0.1 Laravel.test. Let's go ahead and save it, and let's try to run it again. I want to restart it. Now as you can see, we cannot actually access it because the changes we did were not reflected between the Docker and our Laravel. So what we're going to do is remove everything here because we're going to build it again. Please take note that if you did any changes inside of the YML file, you are required to build it again, so the changes will reflect. Now let's go ahead, build it. Let's copy this one. It is now building. Done. Next thing is, let's start our images. Let's wait till it finish. Done. Let's go ahead, check it. Let's refresh. There you go. We can now access our Laravel by using this link. And again, we can run the migration again because the MySQL is refreshed. Let's go ahead and refresh it. There you go. We can now access our Laravel with this domain, Laravel.test. And of course, don't forget to replace your environment file with your app URL. Right? Okay. So since we are done with that step, let's go ahead proceed by adding SSL because we don't want to use HTTP, right? We want to run our Laravel project with HTTPS. Okay, in order to do that, let's go ahead back to our documentation and navigate to setup development SSL. So what we're going to do inside of the Nginx directory, let's go ahead create a new directory called SSL. Oh, my bad. And then after you create the directory, Let's go ahead, run this command and hit enter. Leave all the fields empty because that is not necessary since this is just for development. Now it is done. Let's go ahead, clear it. Let's go check our SSL directory. Now as you can see, we have our certificate installed. To use that, we're going to update our Laravel config again. So what we're going to do is add the listen 443 SSL. Let's go ahead, copy this one and paste it here. But then I just realized you have to separate with different server blocks since it is listening to 443 SSL. We don't want to break our server, right? Since it is not it since it this one is listening to 80 port, we don't want to as well to listen also for the 443 SSL, right? At the same time. So I don't know if it is I don't know if it will work, but it is much better to separate it. Okay? So let's go ahead and copy this file. So as you can see, if ever you use different server name, then we recommend to separate the server block. Example below. That is being said that if you are using a different server name like Laravel.test in my case, you should separate your listen 443 SSL from different server block. So let's go ahead and replace everything here and paste it with the new one. Now again, the brackets, don't forget to replace that with the domain you have set, in my case Laravel.test, and hit save. Now as you can see, it is requiring the SSL certificate, which is the self-signed CRT and the key, which these two files. Now let's go ahead, close it, and again we also need to include the SSL inside of the hosting when the host is run. So inside of the volumes, we're going to include the SSL. So what we're going to do, let's go ahead, copy this one, paste it, and also don't forget to put the F443 port. There you go. Now since we did a new change inside of the Docker Compose YML, then we are required to refresh or build again our project. So let's go ahead, remove this again, images. I know there's a command line that it will do all these actions with a simple with a single line, but for now let's just do it manually. Anyway, let's go ahead, run it again. Let's copy, let's build it again. Okay, let's first check if I have missed anything. Yes, it is listening to 443 and Jinx. Yes, server name. I think we did all the configuration correctly. So let's go ahead, run our images. It is now creating our engines and as well as our DB. Done. Let's go ahead, check it if our project can be run with HTTPS. Let's refresh this. There you go. Our project can be run with HTTPS. However, the browser detected it as fraud, right? So anyway, So since our project is for development only and we want to run it with HTTPS, then you don't have to mind this. Just disregard it. As long as you can run your project with Laravel.ts and HTTPS. Of course, in the real project, you are required to install the valid SSL, of course. Now again, we can now access our Laravel project with HTTPS. Let's go back to our environment file and update this one. Let's go ahead add the VS. Now our SSL is being configured correctly. So let's go ahead. So the next thing is we're going to install the phpMyAdmin because we don't want to access our database through CLI, right? Now it's up to you if you want, but let me show you how. So let's go navigate to Docker image portal. Let's go copy this one and replace the bracket again with the username you have set inside of the environment file. So in my case, I am using admin and MySQL container name. This means the container name that we have set inside of the YML DB. So this is our DB services. So let's just go find the container name, which is this one, and then copy this one and paste it here. There you go. Run it, enter the password. In my case, my password is password. There you go. Now I can access my database. Let's go ahead, show database. There you see. As you can see, here is my database name, right? But since I don't want to access my database through CLI, I want to access it with user interface so that I can manipulate my data much more easier. So exit, clear. Now let's proceed with installing phpMyAdmin. Let's go click the setup phpMyAdmin. Again, we're going to create another file. Let's call it phpMyAdmin conf. This is for the phpMyAdmin configuration. We should separate it instead of putting it inside of the Laravel.config. Why do we need to separate it? Because we don't want to access our phpMyAdmin with like this. Now we want to access the phpMyAdmin with different domain. So let me show you an example. I want to access my phpMyAdmin with different subdomains. So I want to call it phpMyAdmin.laravel.test. So we should access our page, our database with this link. Now let's go ahead and configure that one. Let's just copy this one. So what we're going to do is let's go ahead, copy the command line I have provided inside here. Copy this one, and again the bracket, don't forget. Let's go ahead, copy this, replace the bracket with our phpMyAdmin.laravel.test, and of course don't forget to add that inside of the host. Again, I'm going to use my system password, and let's go ahead add here our phpMyAdmin. Oh, sorry. There you go. Let's go ahead, exit, hit enter. Now, the next thing we're going to do is set up the phpMyAdmin inside of the YML. In here, let's go ahead, check it again. Now, but by the way, Since our phpMyAdmin is listening to port 80 and 443, so we can we can be able use the SSL that is being created. So 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 it should so we should uh, we should allow we can actually we should access our phpMyAdmin with HTTPS. Okay. So inside of here, let's go ahead include the phpMyAdmin. We're going to add new services here. So let's go ahead copy inside of here. There you go. Add the new services, phpMyAdmin. Paste it. Oh, I don't know if it is aligned correctly. Yes. So, so as you can see, I want to use the latest one. But of course, you can as well change the container name here. So in my case, I want to name this phpMyAdmin Laravel. And of course, the PMA host, don't forget, take note you should use the DB since the name of the services is DB, not this one. However, I'm not quite sure if we can actually use that and and paste it here. However, to make it sure, just put the DB. And of course, the network name, don't forget, Laravel. And so if you are wondering what this is supposed to do, what this did is just it simply get the value of the DB username inside of the environment file, which is this one, admin and the password. So I think everything is configured correctly. And by the way, I almost forget, we should also include the phpMyAdmin inside of the hosting here. So what we're going to do is just copy this one, the volumes, there you go. This simply means it wants to run the phpMyAdmin with the same port, which is the 80 and 443. The phpMyAdmin making sure the file should be the same that we have created inside of the Nginx directory, phpMyAdmin config. So let's go ahead check again if we have forget anything else. Yeah, so I think we do. I think we have done everything correctly. Now let's go back to our Docker list and remove everything again because we're going to build our project again. So everything is cleared. Let's go ahead, run it. Build. And then run. As you can see, it is now install the phpMyAdmin with the latest one. So as you can see, we have a warning here. Please don't mind this, just disregard this one. The important thing is our app Laravel, our hosting, which is the Nginx, and the MySQL and the phpMyAdmin is running correctly without having errors. And now let's go ahead, check the containers, and as you can see, there are 4 images is being run, which is the phpMyAdmin, app Laravel, hosting, and MySQL Laravel. There you go. Now let's go ahead, access it. Let's go refresh this one first. Run again the migration, refresh. There you go. We can access the Laravel.test, our user interface, our front end, and for the back end, which is our database, we should access it as well. Proceed it. There you go. We can now access our database with these tables. And I think that's all. So you can now start to develop your project with this Laravel test and with your phpMyAdmin. And I think that's all, guys. Thank you. Please don't forget to subscribe and share. I hope this helps you a lot.